It all started on a crisp autumn morning when a local hiker decided to explore a lesser-known trail deep in the Montana wilderness. The forest was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that makes your own footsteps sound like thunder. As he rounded a bend, something unusual caught his eye, a glint of metal peeking through the fallen leaves. At first, he thought it was just an old piece of farming equipment abandoned decades ago, but as he got closer, the shape became unmistakable. It was a truck, rusted, beaten, and completely out of place. The truck was hidden behind a cluster of overgrown pines, almost as if the forest itself had been trying to swallow it whole. Moss had claimed its tires, vines crept along the windows, and dirt caked the windshield so heavily that the interior was nearly invisible. The hiker, both curious and uneasy, approached cautiously. Something about the vehicle felt wrong, too deliberate, too out of place for a simple abandoned vehicle. His gut told him this wasn't just a relic of the past. When he finally reached the driver's side, he noticed that the doors were slightly ajar. The metal creaked as he nudged them, revealing a scene frozen in time. Inside, dust covered every surface, and the faint smell of decay made him recoil. Papers lay scattered across the seats, old coffee cups coated in grime, and a faded calendar on the dashboard still marked the month of July 1999. The truck had clearly been left in a hurry, but why? And by whom? The hiker's curiosity quickly turned into apprehension. There were small, personal items, keys, a child's toy, even a worn-out backpack, that suggested this wasn't just any truck. Someone had lived part of their life here, or at least had been using it in a way that left a story behind, waiting to be uncovered. He took a cautious step back, realizing the gravity of what he had found. This was no ordinary abandoned vehicle. It was a piece of history, a frozen puzzle, and potentially the key to a mystery that had remained unsolved for decades. By the time the authorities were called, the forest had already begun to reclaim the scene. The branches swayed in the wind, casting strange shadows over the truck's cracked windshield, and the quiet of the woods felt almost alive, as if it were holding its breath. Locals would later describe the moment the discovery was announced as the day Montana's calm, rural life was shattered. A forgotten truck in the middle of nowhere had suddenly become the center of a story that would grip the community with fear, curiosity, and anticipation of the truth buried inside. By the time local law enforcement arrived, word of the discovery had already spread through the small Montana town. Officers approached the rusted truck cautiously, flashlights cutting through the early morning fog. The area was eerily silent, the kind of quiet that makes every creak of metal or rustle of leaves feel amplified. From the first glance, it was clear that this was not an ordinary abandoned vehicle. Something about the way it had been left, doors open, belongings scattered, and the dashboard frozen in time, made the officers uneasy. Inside the truck, the scene was almost surreal. Dust had settled thickly over the seats and floorboards, but it wasn't just dust. They were personal items left behind in an oddly deliberate fashion. A child's stuffed animal tucked under the seat, faded photographs pinned between the visor and the windshield, and a small notebook with pages curled from age and moisture. Nothing seemed to explain why the vehicle had been abandoned, yet everything hinted at a story waiting to be uncovered. Every officer on the scene could feel that they had stumbled upon something much bigger than a simple lost truck. The forensic team began cataloging the scene meticulously. Fingerprints were lifted from the steering wheel, door handles, and scattered items, while swabs were taken from the seats and floor mats. Every detail mattered. There was a sense of urgency. Like the longer the truck stayed in the open, the more the forest would reclaim it, erasing vital clues. The investigators noticed subtle oddities. Footprints partially hidden by leaves, faint scuff marks suggesting a struggle, and the placement of items that didn't seem random. Each discovery only deepened the mystery and made it clear that this abandoned truck was a key piece of a long-forgotten puzzle. One detail caught everyone off guard: a small, locked box under the passenger seat. Its presence was peculiar. Nothing else in the truck seemed securely hidden. What could be inside? Was it connected to whoever had abandoned the vehicle, or perhaps to something far darker? The mere sight of it sent shivers down the spines of the officers. They knew this box could hold answers, or horrors, that might finally explain why the truck had remained untouched for decades. The sense of suspense was almost tangible. Every creak, every whisper of the wind through the trees seemed to echo the secrets the truck was holding. As the investigation continued, the truck became a magnet for questions and theories. Detectives speculated about the people connected to it, wondering if they were victims, witnesses, or perpetrators. Local residents began to share rumors about long unsolved disappearances and strange occurrences in the area around 1999. The abandoned truck was no longer just a relic. It had become the epicenter of a mystery that had haunted Montana for over 20 years. Every person involved felt the weight of what they were uncovering, as though the forest itself was daring them to uncover the truth hidden within its rusted metal frame. The most unnerving discovery came when an officer reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a dusty VHS tape. Its label was simple, almost haunting: 1999. No name, no details, just a date frozen in time. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Who would leave something so personal and yet so mysterious inside a long-abandoned truck? And more importantly, what secrets could it contain? From the moment they held it, there was a chilling sense that this tape might finally answer questions that had haunted the community for decades, or create questions even darker than before. Against every instinct to preserve the evidence untouched, investigators decided to play the tape. The grainy footage flickered on the screen, filling the room with a dim, almost ghostly light. At first, it seemed mundane: shaky handheld shots of the Montana forest, a distant figure walking along a trail, the sound of rustling leaves. But soon, subtle details began to emerge, details that hinted at something sinister. Shadows moved unnaturally, objects appeared where they shouldn't, and the air of fear in the figures captured on tape was unmistakable. Even the most seasoned officers felt a chill creeping down their spines. As the tape continued, it revealed fragments of a story that had been hidden for years. Two teenagers appeared, interacting with someone off camera. Their smiles were brief, forced, and their body language betrayed unease. The footage didn't show what happened next, but tiny clues: the way the camera occasionally shook, abrupt changes in the scene, and hurried whispers, hinted at coercion, confusion, and terror. Each frame seemed to suggest that the events leading up to the disappearance were far more complex and far darker than anyone had imagined. The investigators noticed strange symbols scratched onto a nearby tree, visible in several frames of the tape. Handwritten notes fell into the shot at random moments, some soaked with rain, some almost illegible from age. The combination of these elements painted a puzzle that no one could yet piece together. Whoever had recorded this tape had been documenting something intentionally, but the purpose remained unclear. Was it meant as a confession, a warning, or merely a record for someone else to find decades later? The questions seemed endless, each more disturbing than the last. The room where the tape was being watched was silent except for the flickering of the old television and the faint hum of the player. Every person present felt an unspoken fear, the kind that crawls up your spine and refuses to leave. The footage suggested that the missing teen's fate was tied directly to the truck, the forest, and the unseen forces manipulating the events of that fateful year. The tape wasn't just evidence. It was a doorway into the past, offering terrifying glimpses into a story that no one in Montana, or the world, was truly ready to confront. As the investigators analyzed the VHS tape frame by frame, a chilling realization began to take shape. The teenagers caught on the footage matched descriptions of two young people who had vanished from the Montana area back in 1999. Both had been reported missing months apart, and despite exhaustive searches, no trace of them had ever been found, until now. The connection sent a shiver through the forensic team. Suddenly, the abandoned truck and the tape weren't just eerie relics. They were pieces of a real, unsolved tragedy. Every detail on the tape was scrutinized. The teens appeared at ease at first, laughing and talking as if unaware of the camera, but their body language told a different story. Nervous glances over their shoulders, fidgeting hands, and pauses that seemed to freeze the moment suggested fear lurking beneath the surface. Investigators noted that the person filming was careful to avoid showing their own face, heightening the sense of danger. Each movement captured on tape hinted that the teens were entering a situation they couldn't fully understand, and that would change their lives forever. The tape also revealed subtle environmental clues. Landmarks, road signs, and familiar buildings in the background allowed authorities to reconstruct the route the teens had taken. Investigators cross-referenced these details with old missing persons reports, and a haunting pattern emerged. Both teens had last been seen near the same rural areas, places that locals had long whispered about in hushed tones. These weren't random disappearances. They were connected, and the abandoned truck was now the central link bridging the past and the present. As investigators pieced together the teens' movements, they discovered more than just physical evidence. Notes and scribbled messages found alongside the truck matched the handwriting style seen on the tape. A diary entry, almost illegible from years of exposure, hinted at meetings and secret exchanges, pointing to someone close to the teens who had taken advantage of their trust. The investigation now carried a new weight. the horrifying realization that these disappearances were not accidents, but carefully orchestrated events orchestrated by someone the teens had known. The small Montana town was shaken as authorities began sharing these findings with the public. Families of missing children who had long hoped for closure were forced to relive fear and uncertainty. The tape and the truck had not only reopened cold cases but had ignited a chain of questions that reached into the darkest corners of the community. Who had been behind these disappearances? Why had the truck and the tape remained hidden for more than 2 decades? Every discovery seemed to draw the investigators closer to a terrifying truth, one that had eluded everyone for years. News of the abandoned truck and the shocking tape spread through the small Montana town like wildfire. Residents who had lived in the area for decades were stunned. For years, they had believed the cases of missing teens in 1999 were cold, perhaps forgotten. But now the truth seemed to be clawing its way back into the present. People whispered in grocery stores, gas stations, and church gatherings, exchanging theories that ranged from the plausible to the terrifying. It wasn't just curiosity, it was fear, and it hung over the town like the early morning fog that blanketed the forests surrounding the truck. Families who had hoped for closure suddenly found themselves confronting the possibility that someone in their own community had been hiding unspeakable secrets. Parents stared at their children with renewed anxiety, wondering if the same fate could have happened to their loved ones. Friends revisited old memories, trying to recall anything unusual from 20 years ago, a strange visit, a fleeting shadow, a door left unlocked, but most had long buried such suspicions. Now, the abandoned truck forced them to confront the uncomfortable truth. Evil could hide behind familiar faces, and sometimes the most ordinary places could conceal horrors no one imagined. The discovery ignited rumors that spread like wildfire. Some believed the truck and the tape pointed to cult activity in the area, whispering about secret rituals hidden in the dense forests. Others suspected a local criminal who had operated under the radar, someone clever enough to escape detection for decades. Even the town's law enforcement was forced to admit that while they had investigated thoroughly at the time, the new evidence exposed gaps they could no longer ignore. It became clear that the community itself had been living alongside a secret it was never meant to uncover. Local media quickly descended on the town, and national attention followed soon after. News crews broadcast images of the rusted truck, interviews with shocked residents, and grainy stills from the VHS tape. The town's once quiet streets were suddenly flooded with questions from reporters and curiosity seekers alike. For the first time in years, the missing teens' cases were front-page news, and the sense of dread that had lingered in the back of people's minds now became an unavoidable, shared fear. Every resident felt the tension, an awareness that the past was not done with them, and that the forest, the truck, and the tape had a story that demanded to be told. Even months later, the emotional impact continued to ripple through the community. Residents described sleepless nights, imagining the scenes captured on the tape, trying to reconcile the friendly faces they knew with the horrifying events of 1999. Some reported hearing strange noises in the woods near where the truck had been found, and others claimed to have glimpsed shadowy figures lingering just beyond their property lines. The shock had transformed into a persistent unease, a collective understanding that Montana's serene forests, once seen as safe and familiar, could conceal horrors that even decades of time could not erase. Once the connection between the abandoned truck, the tape, and the missing teens became clear, the investigation took on a whole new urgency. Forensic teams from across Montana were called in, and even the FBI showed interest. Every inch of the truck was scrutinized, from the worn steering wheel to the faded upholstery, in search of fingerprints, hair strands, or anything that could point to who had been inside. The investigators knew that time was critical. Even decades later, evidence could be lost, contaminated, or destroyed. The pressure to uncover the truth was immense, and every detail mattered. The VHS tape underwent intense analysis as well. Technicians enhanced the grainy footage, slowing it down frame by frame to capture details invisible to the naked eye. Handwriting on scattered notes was magnified, and symbols etched into nearby trees were catalogued. The tiniest anomalies, a shadow moving in the background, a fleeting glance, or an object barely visible in the frame, became critical clues. Each revelation added more pieces to the puzzle, but instead of simplifying the case, they made it increasingly complex. The deeper investigators dug, the darker and stranger the story became. Meanwhile, experts began cross-referencing the truck and tape with cold case files from other regions. They discovered that some of the clues pointed beyond Montana, hinting at a larger, more elaborate scheme that might have involved multiple locations and possibly other victims. Every lead seemed to open a dozen more questions, and detectives found themselves chasing threads that had grown cold decades ago. Yet the sense of urgency never waned. The evidence was irrefutable, and the town, long dormant in fear, demanded answers. Every officer, analyst, and technician involved felt the weight of responsibility, knowing they were finally confronting a truth that had eluded so many for years. As the investigation progressed, the discovery of subtle physical evidence intensified the suspense. Tiny fibers on the seats, faint footprints hidden in the dirt around the truck, and remnants of items inside pointed to interactions that had been carefully orchestrated. Experts speculated about the sequence of events, how the teens were lured, where they had gone, and why the truck had been abandoned so deliberately. The narrative was slowly emerging, but it was jagged, incomplete, and frightening. The investigators were piecing together a story of fear, manipulation, and betrayal that had been hidden in plain sight for more than 2 decades. Even the community followed every development closely. Authorities held briefings, releasing carefully selected details, but the tension in the town was palpable. Residents speculated about the identity of the person, or people, responsible, and rumors spread faster than the official statements. Families of other missing children anxiously hoped that this breakthrough might finally shed light on long-forgotten cases. The investigation had moved from a routine cold case to a full-scale forensic and psychological operation, a high-stakes hunt for truth that demanded uncovering secrets so deeply buried that the forest itself seemed to resist letting them go. Weeks of painstaking investigation finally led authorities to a discovery that would change everything. Hidden beneath the truck's worn floorboards, concealed by layers of rust and debris, was a small compartment that no one had noticed before. Inside, personal belongings of the missing teens were carefully preserved: diaries, photographs, and objects that seemed mundane but held critical clues. Each item was a frozen piece of a life interrupted, a reminder of the innocence lost and the secret that had been buried for more than 2 decades. As investigators delved into the contents of the compartment, they uncovered a diary that sent shockwaves through the team. The entries were detailed, describing the teens' final days in chilling detail: their fears, the people they trusted, and the moments that led them unknowingly into danger. The words revealed manipulation and betrayal, a carefully orchestrated scheme by someone close to them. Each page pulled the investigators deeper into a narrative of fear and control, a story no one in the small Montana town could have anticipated. Among the personal items were photographs that showed the teens with a figure whose face was partially obscured, yet whose presence exuded menace. Notes were scrawled with desperate warnings, cryptic symbols, and references to locations that investigators immediately recognized from the VHS tape. Every discovery confirmed what they had feared. The truck and the tape were not merely evidence, they were a meticulously hidden archive of events that someone had intended to keep secret forever. The depth of planning behind the disappearances sent shivers through the forensic team. The revelation didn't stop at physical evidence. Forensic analysis of fingerprints, hair, and fibers pointed to a person known to the teens, someone who had blended seamlessly into their lives. The investigation painted a picture of deception so complete that the town struggled to comprehend it. Friends, neighbors, and even family members now found themselves questioning their assumptions. How could someone so familiar orchestrate such a dark and calculated scheme? The answers lay buried in the truck, in the tape, and now in the hidden compartment that had preserved the truth for more than 20 years. As the town grappled with the discovery, the scope of the tragedy became undeniable. The abandoned truck had been the silent keeper of secrets, the VHS tape a witness to fear, and the hidden compartment the vault of truth. Together, they revealed a timeline of manipulation, abduction, and betrayal that no one had expected. For the investigators, every puzzle piece they uncovered brought them closer to understanding the horrors of 1999. But it also left them questioning the shadows of the past and the darkness that can exist even in the most familiar places. As the investigators closed the case file, one thing became painfully clear: some secrets refuse to stay buried, no matter how long the years pass. The abandoned truck, the VHS tape, and the hidden compartment had finally revealed the truth. But the story didn't end there. The shadows of 1999 still lingered in the forests of Montana, and in the minds of those who had lived through it. Every whisper of the wind, every creaking branch, seemed to echo the unanswered questions left behind. Families finally had answers, but the answers were not comforting, they were haunting. The revelation of betrayal, manipulation, and fear left a permanent mark on the community, a reminder that evil can hide in plain sight, waiting patiently for decades to surface. People who had once felt safe in their small town now looked over their shoulders, knowing that the past had a way of creeping back into the present. For the investigators, the case was both a triumph and a warning. Justice may have been served, but the emotional scars would linger forever. And for anyone watching this story unfold, it serves as a chilling reminder. Sometimes the quietest forests, the rustiest trucks, and the oldest secrets hold horrors that no one was ever meant to see. Montana's 1999 mystery may be solved, but the shadows it cast will never fade. The truck remains a silent witness, the tape a permanent record, and the hidden compartment a graveyard of secrets long forgotten, until now. So, the next time you drive down a quiet, abandoned road, or stumble upon something left behind in the wilderness, remember this. Some mysteries are better left untouched, but some will find a way to reveal themselves, no matter how long it takes.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.